Good morning, welcome to a morning review. This is Kim Watson speaking on Tuesday the 22nd of December. Okay, as we moving or continue in the holiday week leading up to Christmas, uh, Euro continued, that sort of, I talked about it yesterday, a little bullish Arami, it continued to the upside eventually yesterday. At the moment it came just short of the upper band there. On the 4 hours you can see quite clearly a sort of a bull flag pattern going on there. We haven't quite caught today's pivot yet. It may come down to that, but I think actually saying that on a wider, on a wider group of currencies, we certainly have the composite there. We've certainly caught the pivot, so maybe that'll be it. So what can we expect? Well, a break of this trend line here. What have we got? We've got higher lows, higher highs coming through. Break of this trend line here could see us moving towards yesterday's high, maybe the R1 area if we push on beyond that level. So certainly a point to watch for this morning. Seem to want to be moving up quite freely, even when other currencies were selling off yesterday. The euro continued its route there, so seems to be moving a little bit more to the upside, and looks like it's got possibly more distance to go there. Okay, let's look at cable. Cable's still hanging around the bottom of its regression channel there. Not managed to do anything much yesterday. And the consolidation, you can see how consolidated we're getting in this sort of downward wage sort of pattern, or sort of sitting there. Looks, if anything, generally this will be seen as bearish. However, I'm not too sure whether it's a bottoming pattern or it is a bearish pattern. It's not really giving much away. The one thing it is doing is getting into a very tight range, and we sort of okay, we're putting lower highs in. Okay, to an extent we've been putting a couple of higher lows in at the same time in more recent hours. Wonder which way this is going to run eventually, whether it will break to the upside or whether it's caught its daily pivot, it will just roll over. But for now, the volumes, well, I say the volumes, but the range of it makes it unattractive to me. And it may be I have to wait for it to actually start kicking before I can really do too much with it. So when you look at it, as say on this short time frame, it's really not got a lot of range in it. If we do see a break of the lows, well, the obvious place for it to run back down towards is back towards that monthly pivot. Maybe the daily S1, which is just fractionally below that, but the prior lows there, monthly pivot seems like a logical place. By the time it's broken this upper trend line, it will already be into its R1 sort of pivot. I'm not too sure. Perhaps it's got a bit of mileage beyond that trend line for the R1, and maybe even yesterday's highs there and the 100 MA, but the pivots are getting quite pinched here and possibly of less significance as they move in that way. But you just do, well, I mean, I'd look at the RSI quite often, and you just as a sort of a guide when you've got things like this. There's no highs and there's no lows of significance. We're sitting between the sort of the 70-30 area. Price is just retained within that, which makes it, as I say, just consolidates. It just got no peaks and troughs, and hence I shall probably not be doing too much with it. Now I've said that, I'll probably get a trade out of it this morning. Okay. Looking at dollar yen, and quite an ugly old situation. Yesterday it put in this spinning top stroke doji type bar. It's sort of had a bit of divergence possibly going on the 4 hours there on the RSI, but I mean it's just in the middle of nowhere really. Just more consolidation going on, not quite as bad as the pound, but they're all the same. It's consolidated, it's in relatively tight range. The problem with this is you draw trend lines on it and it can just flip out of one, run through it a little bit, then run the other side and run through the other trend line, and because it's just so tight. So again, it's not one I'll be looking to trade. In terms of where it may go, we've got the 50 MA just above us, hasn't been tested yet, so perhaps a run into that may do something and create some resistance. But any sort of significant move will probably, because it's so tight, we just probably push through it. As I say, it's just like the trend lines. It's a bit meaningless. It may just push through it a little bit and pull back into the range. But so it makes it less significance. Okay, Aussie dollar. Now we have seen some movement in the Aussie dollar. It's pushed up again through the Asian session here. It's moving up through yesterday evening in the UK, late evening into the Australian period. It's broken the recent highs. It's just maybe back into this upper band here on the dailies, and may find a bit of resistance around here. Maybe a bit of supply around this area at the moment. Now, just looking through here in terms of resistance points, it's not necessarily that clear. And again, we've already gone through the daily pivot and the R1, and it's projected as well. I'm just looking at all this. This dotted line is we've got the projected on there as well. So it's it's right through its R2. So it's not a lot I can do there. I mean, generally we'd expect it to close within the R2. However, when the pivots are pinched like this, as I said, they become a little bit more meaningless. So there's not a lot we can take from that. Looking at the Canadian dollar then, finally, well, I need to just look at oil first before we carry on. And the oil yesterday hit 11-year lows, I think it was, and it's 34 bucks. It's just keeps on kicking it, chipping away at the sort of the lows there. Decent bounce once it hit the lows. At the moment, it's sort of a rising wedge in on the 4 hourlies. I don't know. To me, the thing is, there's always downside risk with oil at the moment. So long as it's there, that could be affecting the CAD, and the CAD will obviously push to the upside. We're pretty close to that 1.4, or the prior highs there. It's just over 1.4, 1.4009, which was the prior highs. But the 1.4 may be a sort of an area where there's some supply. As I said yesterday, I think there were some orders sitting around that area last week, sell orders. So maybe it's a bit of a ceiling for now at least. Coming down the time frames again, we've got a wedge that's sort of built, and it's I don't know how reliable it is when it's just sort of it's chopping along like this. If it's just to explain, a wedge when you've had a decent trend, I'm more happy if it takes a break to the upside. It's just more of a decent move. When you've got this sort of mess, and then you've got a wedge in a mess, it's less reliable in my book. So I can't really be buying just on a break of the trend line or early this morning or anything like this, even though they've got the decent point of the R1 potentially. If you can get through the pivot there, daily pivot, back through the daily pivot, well, it's got a potential R1. Yesterday's highs are pretty close to that R1, and as of Friday's highs and Thursday's highs. So all around that sort of area, there's a potential for it to draw back into that. If the oil starts dropping off, maybe it'll push up there. As I say, a little bit less reliable when you're in this sort of chop zone. Okay, so news-wise today, we haven't got significant news out until 1:30. We've got the final GDP coming out for the US. Because of the variability between readings on GDP for the US, there's a lot of beans to count there. We do see some volatility around even the final GDP quite frequently. Expected to come in at 1.9 this time, final versus 2.1 previous, so a slight trimming back. We'll have to have a look, wait and see on that, but that's at 1:30, so maybe a bit of volatility around that point, particularly in a lighter market. It may just give it a bit more of a kicker. Aside of that, there's very little significant news coming out, and as yesterday, I would expect quite long periods of the doldrums effectively. Okay, so give you a chance to go out and get your Christmas shopping. and his last little bits. Right, on that note, happy shopping, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye for now.